Welcome to Experiencing Pilgrimage, Past, Present and Future. This event forms part of the York Festival of Ideas programme, and this talk is the first in a two-part series. For the second event on June the 20th, I will be joined by archaeologist Kate Giles, and we will be accepting live questions from the audience. More details can be found on the festival website. Experiencing Pilgrimage, Past, Present and Future. Welcome to this exploration of pilgrimage and its role in human experience, a quest which, like its subject, will involve us in a wide-ranging journey through both time and space. I want to begin with two deceptively simple questions. What exactly is pilgrimage, and who counts as a pilgrim? These are not as easy to answer as we might think. Let's take a look at this sequence of expressions of pilgrimage past and present. Here we have ancient Greeks seeking healing from the gods. 4th century Christian pilgrims discovering the land of the Bible, as here at Bethlehem. Medieval pilgrims travelling to give thanks at the tomb of Thomas Becket, or praying for healing at the shrine of St William here in York. Medieval monks and anchorites who withdrew from the everyday world and stayed still physically in order to journey inwardly. Hindu pilgrims bathing in the Ganges, Muslim pilgrims undertaking the Hajj, 21st century devotees of St Elvis at Graceland, and people of all faiths and none taking the road to Santiago de Compostela. The current rediscovery of English cathedrals as pilgrimage destinations and places of remembrance, peace, reflection and comfort. The Hillsborough Memorial, a roadside shrine for the victim of a traffic accident, and the London Chelsea Flower Show, an extraordinary kaleidoscope of vivid imageries. All these activities at different points in history and across a wide range of cultures have been considered to be pilgrimage. But how can all these wildly different experiences somehow share a common label? Here I want to refer to a source of wisdom which may be familiar to many of you. When I use the word Humpty Dumpty said in a rather scornful tone, it means just what I choose it to mean, neither more nor less. The question is, said Alice, whether you can make words mean so many different things. And Alice's rather blunt challenge is very relevant here, because pilgrimage is a word which apparently can mean a whole multitude of surprisingly different things. Recently, I did a search in the United States Library of Congress catalogue and came up with 4,704 titles containing the word pilgrimage. These include an Australian wine pilgrimage, a bowling pilgrimage, a patchwork pilgrimage, that's about quilting in case you were wondering, a pilgrimage by foot and greyhound bus to Tolkien's Middle-earth, and even a flying saucer pilgrimage. These varying uses of the word show its great flexibility. But that very flexibility means anybody who wishes to can, Humpty Dumpty-like, make it mean more or less anything they want. Because we all seem to know instinctively that a pilgrimage is a special journey to a place with a special meaning. It's one of the very few religious terms which still works in general conversation. So that's why we talk of going on pilgrimage to the Chelsea Flower Show or to a football stadium, depending on our personal passions, or returning to where we used to live, or a place associated with someone dear to us who may have died. Just using the word today is enough to invest almost any kind of journey with enhanced significance. So why this continuing resonance? What is the enduring appeal of pilgrimage? Why is it more popular in Britain today than at any time since the Middle Ages? What does it offer human beings that so many still want to embrace the experience of journeying and of discovering special places? I've been studying pilgrimage for almost 30 years, coincidentally the period in which it has exploded in popularity again in this country, and I'm still figuring out the answers. But recent work I've been doing in digital reconstruction of medieval pilgrim encounters, observing the responses of people today, and learning what neuroscience can tell us about the power of our surroundings and our senses to affect human well-being and behaviour. All of these are opening up new understanding, and I want to share some of this with you today. The images we've just seen fit within three main categories of pilgrimage experience: a physical journey, short or long, to a special place, an inner journey, or a journey through life. Today I'm going to focus on the first of these, but always remembering that all such journeys ultimately derive their power from their impact on our inner sense of well-being, and at their most effective, fit into or bring new focus to our overall journey through life. Pilgrimage to special places has three main elements which have the power to change people: the journey, the arrival, and interaction with a special place, and then what is carried away back into everyday life. And at the heart of these experiences are the senses, because recent work in neuroscience reiterates the fact that sensory experience is not an optional extra in appreciating and responding to the world around us. It is the only way we can do either. Human interaction with the world is channeled entirely through our senses, and it's our senses which drive our emotions, our reasoning, and our decision-making. And they form the memories that we carry within us. As philosopher Barry Smith says, it's hard to overemphasize the role of the senses in shaping our experience of the world and of ourselves. Our sense of belonging and our emotions, our ways of coping, all depend on our senses. Sensory experience is the fabric of the mind, and it helps to fashion who we are. And current research also stresses that we're not just talking about 5 senses, as has traditionally been the case, but possibly as many as 30. And crucially, for thinking about the ways we interact with special places, these include kinesthesia, which is the sensation of movement, and proprioception, which is an awareness of where our bodies are in relation to our surroundings. Researchers also emphasize that the senses work together to process incoming data, and the brain filters what is received through pre-existing beliefs and experience. So as it says here, sensual perception is not the province of separate individual senses. It's the sum of those senses interacting with the whole of the external world. Perception is a whole body phenomenon. So human responses to special places are therefore remarkably complex and shaped by many interconnected factors. As the influential geographer Yi-Fu Tuan says, places are spaces which have become an organized world of meaning. And finding meaning in places is absolutely at the heart of pilgrimage across many cultures. The history of sacred spaces shows that they have been identified as possessing inherent value because of a natural feature such as a mountain or a spring. They've been marked out, delineated. They've been enhanced and explained through teaching and ritual, and they are very much organised and stage managed in terms of the effect and the experience created. Now, in order to make this short survey in any way manageable, I'm going to concentrate on aspects of pilgrimage which have influenced the history, geography and culture of England through the centuries. Historical Christian sites inevitably dominate this story, but it's important to note that other faiths are now also identifying their own sacred sites within these islands, such as this Hindu site at Scandervale in North Wales and this Sufi site in Warwickshire. Intriguingly, other faiths and cultures are also beginning to map meaning onto Christian sites, such as the shrine of St Jude in Faversham, where Hindus as well as Christians come to pay their respects. Many who do not subscribe to any formal religious system still like to make their own pilgrimages and often use Christian sites like Canterbury Cathedral or Holy Island or Iona as their goals. Indeed, the last 2 years have seen the development of pilgrimage trails and cycle routes connecting every cathedral in England, as well as a pilgrim passport to record visits. I'm a historian, so I naturally think that understanding the present is greatly enhanced by knowing where we've come from. But it's definitely true of pilgrimage, because past and present so often merge to create powerful experiences today. So let's start by seeing how key elements of pilgrimage have worked in the past. How far back do we need to go? Further than you might imagine. We tend to think of the later Middle Ages as a golden age of pilgrimage, with Chaucer's imaginary pilgrims accompanied by hosts of men, women and children on their way to the shrines of saints and other sites. What pilgrimage offered them was forgiveness, guidance, spiritual growth, healing, and other practical benefits, as well as a rare opportunity to explore the world. But pilgrimage in this country goes back much further. Anglo-Saxon saints like St Cuthbert and St Guthlac also drew pilgrims, both in their lives and subsequently. And their shrines and the buildings which housed them looked back in their turn to the great churches built by the Emperor Constantine in the Holy Land in the 4th century, which had themselves been inspired by the magnificent structures and furnishings of the temple in the Bible. There's a direct line of descent from the special sites of the Old Testament and indeed the sacred sites of ancient Greece through the Middle Ages to the pilgrimage places of today. And this isn't just tradition. It's about passing on the skill of designing settings which will act powerfully on human senses and evoke deep transformative responses. Nothing in the world of pilgrimage happens by accident. So I want to look very quickly at those ancient models because they show the principles which have governed pilgrimage ever since. To look first at pilgrimage in classical Greek and Roman experience. These sites were often identified as sacred because of some astonishing physical feature, natural features such as a cave or a spring or a mountain, as here at Delphi. Pilgrims came for many reasons, many core human reasons which have held good over time. They wanted to ask for healing, for the gift of children, for guidance and success in life, and to offer worship. Temples provided settings which instilled awe and encouraged belief. And sensory experience was put centre stage, with magnificent statues of the gods indicating their power, choreographed rituals and processions, as this one on the right here of the slide, gold, silver, jewels in abundance, brightly painted colours, embroidered silks, prayers, hymns, and musical instruments. Pilgrims could see and touch the votive offerings left by others. These were either symbolises prayer for the part of the body that needed assistance, or they were given as thank offerings when healing was received. Pilgrims could also sleep by shrines in the hope of being helped by the gods in their dreams. And many of these aspects were incorporated into Christian pilgrimage as it developed. Secondly, I want to look at the Bible. The Hebrew Bible, the Christian Old Testament, shows pilgrimage to the temple in Jerusalem as a cornerstone of Jewish identity and spirituality. And some of the Psalms speak of intense longing to reach this special place and feel close to God. The descriptions of the temple show that it was very carefully designed to meet those expectations. Constructed and furnished with superlative craftsmanship and immensely costly materials, which together created a multi-sensory immersive experience of glory and splendor. It's full of abundant color, texture, fragrance, and sound. The priests in costly crimson, blue, purple, and gold, bronze, silver, and gold fittings reflecting the light cast by lampstands. The air full of the fragrance of myrrh, cinnamon, incense, and the whole space filled with sounds of praise. And this effect was intensified as the priests and the people moved through the space, fell on their knees, prayed, their bodies expressing the awe which had been inspired within them. Why so much gold and silver? Why so many jewels? Why flood these places with expensive perfume and the sounds of worship? Why so much ritual involving movement and touch? Because these all symbolize power and holiness. These experiences absolutely enveloped the pilgrims, and light is deployed as a sensory tool to create flashes of response from the gleaming artifacts of gold and silver. And they are surrounded, embraced by smells and sounds, which again signal praise and holiness. If we move on to the experience of the 4th century, we find a new manifestation of pilgrimage. The New Testament writers in the early church stepped back from that Old Testament emphasis on the importance of sacred places, emphasizing instead the idea of pilgrimage as a journey through life towards heaven. But when Constantine, who had been acclaimed as emperor here in York, adopted the Christian faith in the early 4th century, that all changed. Deciding to make Palestine a holy land full of splendid church buildings, he took the temple, together with some emphases from his pagan past, as his model. And great churches such as this, the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, were built in Jerusalem and elsewhere. And they too were filled with gold, silver, precious stones, light and colour. Once again, beauty signalled holiness and the presence of God. Jerusalem was promoted as a place where the actions of God recorded in the past could become the power of God experienced in the present. Others only hear, but we see and touch, said the local bishop in a superb piece of marketing, and thus the direction of Christian pilgrimage was set. People relived and reenacted biblical events in situ. They worshipped in ways which triggered emotion and created powerful memories. This is shown in an account by Egeria, a nun from Spain who visited Jerusalem in the late 4th century. She speaks of churches decorated with gold, jewels, silk hangings, too marvellous for words, and describes taking part, and you can just get a glimpse of what she saw and experienced. And then she talks about taking part in a series of emotion-packed events at the very sites where they were believed to have taken, the original biblical events were believed to have taken place. So she wrote, when everyone arrives at Gethsemane, they have an appropriate prayer, a hymn, and a reading from the Gospel about the Lord's arrest, because that's where it's set in the New Testament. By the time it has been read, everyone is groaning and lamenting and weeping so loud that people even across the city can probably hear it all. And then later, at the place of the crucifixion, the bishop is brought a box containing an example of the holy wood of the cross, and people touch it. They touch it with their eyes and then they kiss it. Even ordinary objects, such as earth and stones from the Holy Land, were believed to possess holiness and were taken away, as in this 6th century box, which is now preserved in the Vatican Museum. There was some opposition to these developments, but in the end, the power of this multisensory experience won out. And despite subsequent attempts to suppress pilgrimage within Christianity, it has continued to reassert itself. And this creation of places of immense beauty and powerful experience didn't just affect the Holy Land, but rapidly spread across Christendom. And even in the early days of the Church in Anglo-Saxon England, we see deliberate imitation of the sensory splendours of the temple and the churches of the Holy Land, as kings and bishops used precious metals and jewels and the skill of great craftsmen to create a powerful sense of interaction with the holy. This continues in the Middle Ages, in the later Middle Ages. So let's take a look at pilgrim experience then. So what did pilgrimage offer in the Middle Ages? It was supposed to strengthen a person's relationship with God, though it has to be said that some returned home needing more forgiveness because of what they got up to than when they set out. Walking wasn't exactly a treat for the average medieval person, so unless you were doing a specific penance, you would have ridden, if you could, as these pilgrims are shown in the illustration to John Lydgate's Siege of Thebes manuscript. But the journey to the shrine, for most people, would have offered a rare break from work and the chance to explore the world and have an adventure. Some for whom travel was not possible could have engaged in pilgrimage of the imagination, a kind of virtual pilgrimage using devotional guides and images. Medieval pilgrims may have been inspired by a sermon, the experience of someone else, or just by personal need. Some just wanted to come close to a saint to whom they were devoted or to learn more about God. Guilt and a need for forgiveness would have been on the minds of many. For some, however, pilgrimage was not voluntary but a penalty imposed for a serious offence. And miracle stories describe individuals who'd been placed in chains permanently as punishment, being released after seeking a saint's aid. And the St William window here at York Minster shows a pilgrim on one side in chains, and on the other side, on the left-hand side, showing that he's presenting his manacles from which he's been released to the saint. And that St William window is an amazing insight into the world of medieval pilgrimage. Healing for oneself or others was very high on the list of needs at a time when medicine offered very little. The sick made their way to holy sites, sometimes lay beside the shrine, as people had done in ancient Greece, in the hope of a cure. In essence, saints were viewed as those possessing power in a world where most people were powerless. Women pilgrims often bore family concerns, praying for the health of children, or perhaps to be given children, or to pass safely through childbirth. Some needs were a little niche, as in the case of the woman who came to St William because she'd become very ill after accidentally eating a frog. When she reached the shrine, she vomited up the frog and was well again. You can even see the frog. Pilgrim journeys could be long, across England or beyond, or very short. The indomitable 15th century merchant's wife, Margery Kemp, travelled to Rome, Jerusalem and Compostela, but also described a visit to a church 2 miles away from her home as a pilgrimage. The journey might be short and relatively low-key. It could also be the greatest adventure of someone's life. Visiting a holy place might not be the sole intention of the travellers. Sometimes it was fitted into other journeys. But what every pilgrimage needed to offer was a pathway from everyday life to a place set apart, with a special quality about it and the promise of a special encounter and transformation. What mattered was what the place could offer and how it met the needs and expectations of pilgrims. Whatever the distance travelled, pilgrims would have carried not only their pilgrim staff and bag, but expectancy. For those visiting major sites, such anticipation would have been heightened as they neared their goal, glimpsing from afar a great cathedral reaching up into the sky, or standing in wonder before a facade adorned with carvings of Christ and his saints. This is a reconstruction created by my team at the Centre for the Study of Christianity at York, a very detailed recreation of Canterbury in the mid-15th century, and you can see how the cathedral, towards the top of the picture, towers above the tiny houses, which are not that small. So as pilgrims approached, it would have been awe-inspiring to see this building appearing in front of them. And Erasmus offers this description of Canterbury. The church dedicated to St Thomas rises to the sky so majestically, it inspires devotion even when you see it from afar. It has 2 huge towers, as though greeting visitors a long way off. The approach to holy places was intended and expected to trigger an emotional response. How might these places change lives? As I've mentioned, our centre uses archaeological and archival evidence to create digital reconstructions of medieval shrines so we can better understand pilgrim experience. At Canterbury in 1322, Friar Simon Fitzsimmons described the body of Becket resting in a case made of most pure gold, adorned with innumerable precious stones, with shining pearls like unto the gates of the heavenly Jerusalem and sparkling gems. I'll show you a reconstruction of this in a moment. Not only were these places where heaven and earth were believed to intersect, they actually looked like it. Seeing was believing. Nor were the other senses excluded. Bells rang, choirs sang music fit for heaven. Tombs such as that of St William were believed to exude healing oil, and you can see here a pilgrim collecting the oil. And above all, the pilgrims were moving, kneeling, crawling within these holy spaces. Here they would have been surrounded by incense wafting around them. And this image is very informative because it shows an angel having their bowl filled with incense from the hand of God, reinforcing the heavenly quality of these scents. And here we see pilgrims crawling into the tomb, holes in the tomb of Edward the Confessor, in order to get as close as possible, physically close to the saint. They were being touched and touching them, literally and metaphorically. Fragments of stone, dust, healing oil might even be consumed, bringing taste into the sensory equation. All the senses, internal and external, were thus working together. The liturgy, the ritual, the sounds, the external stimulus, the smells, the movement, the touching things, the devotional objects, all interacting with what was going on inside a person. The offerings around shrines would also have helped build faith by affirming the willingness of God to answer prayer. Shrines would often have been hung with these votive offerings we saw earlier in the context of ancient Greece, and that would have meant pilgrims felt that they were part of a community coming to ask for help and receiving it. And memories were strengthened as pilgrims of all classes took away objects believed to carry transferable holiness and feed into their longer life journey towards heaven. And if you look at the bottom of this image, you see there are do-it-yourself, foldable, very cheap lead reliquaries into which somebody could put a stone or a piece of cloth so that even the poorest could afford these mementos to take away. This is a shrine, what remains of it, of St Cuthbert in Durham Cathedral. It was stripped out like so many things at the Reformation. But what our team has done, it has been to actually recreate what it would have looked like. And you can see immediately the colour, which would have been very impressive, and you look through the rails at this astonishing shrine towering above you. There is gold, there are jewels. It is a startling example of richness, signalling the power of God and the power of the saint. And people would have come and knelt in the niches below, where we can see them in the Chapel of Nine Altars. And the privileged might have been able to come right up to the shrine of the saint, kneel in those niches, and ask for his help and his comfort, his practical care, and offer prayers in that setting. This gives you an example of what has been lost, essentially, through the Reformation. Secondly, we have recreated from archaeological evidence what the pilgrim experience would have been at the shrine of Thomas Becket in Canterbury. That again now is an empty space. But this is what it would have looked like. And as pilgrims approached the shrine, through those grills, they would have seen glimmers of gold and jewels, and it would have got clearer and clearer as they approached. There would have been a sense of privilege. You can see on the left, there are people being shown the stories of Thomas Becket in the miracle windows. At the far end of the shrine, a monk is showing people the extraordinary jewels which have been given as signs of faith and thanksgiving. And the people approaching the shrine, the first figure was a shipman who'd been delivered from shipwreck at sea. This is a couple bringing a baby who's been healed in answer to prayers to Thomas Becket. These are all real stories. On the right, you can see people again kneeling in the little niches to the side of the shrine, getting as close as they can to this miracle-working saint. These are hugely powerful scenes. And here we have the scene, Thomas, where in the crypt of Canterbury Cathedral, where Becket's body had lain before it was moved to that wonderful shrine. And people would have come and stayed here for long periods of time, those with mental and physical illness, their carers looking after them. Again, you've got crutches and other symbols of healing hanging up as by way of encouragement. When the Reformation came, pilgrimage became a major battleground. And despite considerable popular resistance, much of it was systematically dismantled, and many buildings lost that beauty and splendour. And Protestant teaching refocused on the New Testament emphasis on pilgrimage as a journey through life, most famously known through John Bunyan's Pilgrim's Progress. And yet, it wasn't that easy to suppress pilgrimage and a desire for special places. We get glimpses of good Protestant Englishmen travelling to the Holy Land and finding themselves, despite themselves, caught up in emotional responses. One of my favourites is Robert Curzon, who arrived in Jerusalem in 1834. He wrote, "It was curious to observe the different effects Jerusalem had on us. A Christian pilgrim fell on his knees and kissed the holy ground. 2 others embraced each other. As for us, the visitors from England, we sat bolt upright on our horses and stared and said nothing. Around us, the more natural children of the East wept for joy. We who consider ourselves civilized and superior repressed our emotions. I would have got off my horse and walked barefoot towards the gate if I had dared. At last I blew my nose and rode on." And you can tell he really regrets that he cannot unbutton that and get away from that stiff upper lip approach and engage. However, before much longer, Thomas Cook would both found modern tourism and revive pilgrimage to the Holy Land almost single-handed, opening the way to secular and spiritual travel for millions. And pilgrimage has continued to grow and prosper through the 20th century and to the present day. But why are we seeing such a resurgence of interest in pilgrimage and special places today? I think it's partly because pilgrimage really feeds our senses in so many ways that enhance well-being. Many speaking about pilgrimage today focus particularly on the element of journey because of the rare opportunities pilgrimage offers us to escape from 21st century pressures and enjoy exercise, peace and space. Organisations such as the Green Pilgrimage Network and the British Pilgrimage Trust encourage a wide range of audiences to explore the therapeutic benefits of walking or cycling and engaging with nature. And walking has become something that has become so popular that pilgrimage paths are being reinstated or invented all over Britain. And a common experience of pilgrimage is expressed in these 2 very different quotes. First, the prologue to Chaucer's Canterbury Tales talks about April, showers, the wind, the woods, the fields, the birds, wanting to go on pilgrimage, and then a pilgrim group coming together of various people, falling together by chance. And secondly, exactly 600 years later, this account from a pilgrim to Santiago de Compostela. "I began to walk. From this moment when my heart leapt with joy, my discoveries began. Landscapes and marvellous skies, plants, flowers, trees, majestic flights of birds, and diverse pilgrims of different ages, professions, nationalities, social classes, and belief." There's very little difference between those 2 accounts. And as we walk, we move through space, we feel the wind, the sun, and the rain on our faces, our feet make contact with the road or the pathways, our eyes drink in landscapes, trees, plants, buildings, signposts, we hear the birds, we hear the traffic, we hear the words and reactions of fellow pilgrims. Here are some quotes from people about what pilgrimage has meant to them very recently. "My greatest, most lasting joys were my fellow pilgrims. I think the main difference is the pilgrimage changed me as a person, made me more confident, opened me up." And then a pilgrim to Santiago de Compostela As the days moved forward, the hours of walking cleared a great space within me. The multitudes that contributed to my life's journey became a sea of faces with specific names. With every interior encounter, forgotten relationships were renewed, and the many pieces that had built my life were rediscovered. On Pentecost Sunday, the Romanesque cathedral in majestic posture stood before me. Never had I felt such a sense of peace. That is physical journey, life journey, inner journey, all woven together in a way that brings new perspectives and a sense of wholeness. It's estimated that between 200 and 300 million people worldwide now undertake religiously motivated pilgrimage each year. And they're not alone because they have many fellow travellers. You may have seen some of the recent celebrity pilgrimage programmes where famous people are persuaded to put themselves to the physical and mental demands of walking the road to Compostela or to Rome. They're not always very enthusiastic about the challenges, but they usually find the experience worthwhile. And sociologists of religion say that when people describe themselves on census forms as no religion, what they often mean is they don't subscribe to any form or belief system. It doesn't mean they're not interested in prayer or pilgrimage or exploring spirituality. And tourism and pilgrimage often overlap, with one merging into the other. Also very significant is the increase in instant shrines. Only in the last 20, 30 years has it become usual in the UK for a home where people have died tragically, such as at Grenfell Tower or the site of a road accident here, to become a site of a shrine and a place of pilgrimage and remembrance. Creating shrines with photographs, flickering candles, prayers, messages and gifts, as we see here, may seem spontaneous, but is actually become an established ritual that allow people to process their grief and loss. And although it's taking place in a supposedly post-Christian context, it's drawing very heavily on previous practice and shows that while human beings may turn away from formal religion, they still value and need rituals of this kind to help them deal with major life events. What about arrival today? The architecture of sacred sites was designed to affect us physiologically and psychologically, and it still works. When we enter a cathedral, architecture like this, the soaring vaults, as here at Peterborough, and the great stained glass windows, encourage us to look up, and that actually changes the flow of blood to the brain, giving a feeling of lightheadedness or otherworldliness. Visual, tactile stimuli, experience of moving within spaces, being surrounded by smells such as incense and the sound of a choir or a great organ, still have profound effects. Here are some responses we collected from people. Some describe themselves as visitors, others as pilgrims, but it's very hard to spot the difference. I was struck how emotional I felt the minute I set foot inside. I felt an immediate sense of peace, calm and comfort. There's a sense of awe and wonder at the craftsmanship and the sense of worship echoing from ages past to the present day, which inspires and encourages me. It feels like your prayers connecting not only with God, but with prayers that have been offered in the place over hundreds of years. It's a privilege to be in a space that absorbed and housed the prayers of many. Attending evensong, I felt bathed and cleansed by the sound washed. In both visitors and pilgrims, we see emotion, awe, awareness of beauty, peace, holiness, something beyond oneself, and a deep response to a place that's become special through time. The distinction between pilgrim and tourist is not always clear, since most people's experience sits on a continuum and they can move between one and the other, even within the same visit. Scratch a pilgrim and you may well find a tourist. Scratch a tourist and you may find a pilgrim in the making. Many still come seeking healing for themselves or others. And I was recently intrigued to find pilgrimage concepts incorporated into a therapy program for children with developmental needs. They're asked to bring their teddy bears, which are their symbols of security and comfort, and these are gently removed and hidden. The children then journey along a very carefully constructed sensory path using 7 senses, sight, sound, smell, taste, touch, movement, and body position to find and be reunited with their bears who are waiting for them at the end of their journey. That sounds awfully like a pilgrimage to me. And it suggested that companies would do well to send their employees on pilgrimage type retreats to help with workplace stress. As philosopher Mark Johnson claims, change your brain, your body, or your environment, and you'll change how you experience your world and even who you are. These discoveries go hand in hand with a rediscovery of ancient sites. Pre-COVID, around 10 million people were visiting English cathedrals every year, with visitors increasingly wanting to light candles and leave prayers. Candles provide a flame, something that you touch, even there's a scent about them, and is an indefinable indication of prayer, searching. As one visitor said, such a small light and whisper smoke provides a concrete sign of longing. And so we're seeing ancient patterns central to pilgrimage across time and cultures re-emerging strongly all around us. And these activities are important to people from a wide range of backgrounds today. One visitor to Canterbury, who initially identified as being of no religion, began to wonder in an interview with one of my colleagues whether in fact he wasn't indeed a pilgrim. This is what he said: "My impression of this place was, wow, there's something, this cathedral is rooted so deep down in the earth. It's a feeling I've never had in this intensity or in this depth. It's not only rooted in the earth, but rooted in time, as if the cathedral was here as, what's the word? A witness." And I find it really interesting the way these responses chime with recent research in psychology and neuroscience. People want their lives to be meaningful. It's through our bodily perceptions, movements, emotional meaning and feelings that meaning becomes possible. Profound architecture makes us experience ourselves as complete, embodied and spiritual beings, architect Unani Palasma, or stops us dead in our tracks, and sometimes, when intense enough, acts like a reset button on the self. People sometimes emerge from awe experiences with new selves, values and allegiances. So, pilgrimage in the future. Where do we go? Literally, where do we go from here? What our whistle-stop tour has shown us is that pilgrimage speaks to something very deep in human nature, very persistent, and although attempts may be made and have been made to suppress it, it keeps coming back. Before COVID-19 hit this country, there was already evidence of a growing desire to engage with the materiality of real places, such as this, the entrance to the cathedral at Santiago de Compostela, where people come and they touch the foot of the saint. His foot has been worn smooth because people want immediately to make contact. We want to feel connected to others. We want space, stillness, a chance to reflect on what's happened to us, sometimes to grieve for what we've lost, and find new perspective. And these things are even more necessary now. They are what special places have offered through the centuries through rich sensory experience, and still do today. A project I'm currently leading with colleagues on the impact of COVID is finding that many non-church members have felt totally bereft because churches and cathedrals, their go-to in a crisis places, were closed to them at a time of great need. Looking forward, the trends indicate that different national groups will continue to map their own identity and meaning onto places, as with this annual Nigerian pilgrimage to Aylesford Priory in Kent, and that new pilgrim routes will continue to emerge. So the value given to pilgrimage and engaging with places isn't going away anytime soon. While travel has been limited or forbidden, online virtual pilgrimage has opened up the experience of journey to many. Again, this is likely to continue to supplement in-person visits, but also because it gives opportunity to those who cannot travel physically, and it opens up the whole world to all of us at the click of a mouse. But however the journey is undertaken, or places are encountered, whatever the changes in technology, human beings can still learn and respond only through their senses. And it seems that the appetite for visual, tactile, audible, and kinesthetic experience and the desire to journey to and engage with special places has never been stronger than it is today.